Advancing Kingdom Lifestyle.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, our viewers. Welcome to the GG Report. This is your favorite show every Friday evening. We are here live at Elevate TV studios, and I have with me my guest, repeat guest. He's back on the set due to public demand. My friend Samuel Marete, he's here. He's an economist. He's a financial expert. And everything in between. He's a professional and someone who is very, very astute, has studied, has done his specialization. Actually, he actually has a master's in public policy and of course bachelor's in IT, and also a lot of experience in the area of accounting. He's actually a fellow of the it's called Certified Chartered Accountant, the FCCA. And so some has a lot of experience working with some of the big organizations in the finance and accounting, auditing, and he brings in a lot of wealth of experience. He's actually currently working with some development organization and very, very actively involved in the development sector, very familiar with what's going on, especially in the areas of economic development, agribusiness, forestry, and all those other areas there, aqua farming. So in the agribusiness, he's actually involved very intimately and also familiar with the other sectors of the economy. So welcome. Let's have this conversation. We're going to be revisiting some of the questions that we left unanswered 2 weeks ago. And so join us, share with your friends. Karibu sana. Let's get this conversation going. And we're going to have a great time. All right. So Samuel Marete, welcome to the show. Welcome our viewers, and tell them to join us, one and all, yes, as you briefly reintroduce yourself, yes, so that they can actually get familiar with you.
All right. Thank you very much, sir. And very warm welcome to our viewers to this evening's show. It's a privilege and an honor to be back on the show. I'm not sure how much public demand there was, but I'm very grateful to be back on the set. I've not been, before Elevate TV, I was not on TV except perhaps as a statistic. So I'm very grateful to Elevate TV for giving me the opportunity to be here. Thank you very much.
Welcome, Sam. Welcome, Sam. And we've of course had a chat offline. That's what always happens. Before a guest comes in here, we engage, we start talking, and we start exchanging ideas. And so it gets very, very interesting when we have this kind of conversation, and we have also had so much of the conversation of the set. And so, ladies and gentlemen, we want to begin to engage. And you can see on social media platforms, we're talking about the state of the economy. This is the second part of that conversation. And so we want to start from one key question that was asked in the last conversation we had here. And the question came from one, Joshua Limo. Joshua Limo raised a question of the difference between what statistics are saying, the government is saying about the state of the economy is okay, we are doing well, and all that, and then what is actually on the ground. Kenyans are very familiar with that statement, hari kwa ground. The ground is the real deal. Things on the ground are different. So there is that. So we want to deal with that issue is there a difference between what is being talked about and actually what is happening in real life on the ground? And then also we are going to also revisit a conversation we never finished about some of the key drivers of the economy. We touched a little bit about manufacturing. That's something we need to revisit and maybe ask ourselves, what are the opportunities there? Is Kenya exploiting that space? What are the historical dynamics, and how does that actually, contribute to economic development? So let's go back to the question, and Sam, I think you can address ourselves to that question: the difference between the numbers and what is actually manifesting on the ground.
Yeah, thanks. And excuse me, I want to thank my friend Joshua Limo for tuning in last week and giving that very insightful question. I think one of the reasons why economics has these contradictions is because of exactly things like that. Why is the Economist telling me I should be happy when I'm not? And
yes.
I can feel that I'm not happy. So to me, I think if we can reorient economics to answer the simple questions, then we are making progress in as far as it being a discipline that can help us is concerned. Maybe I'll give an anecdotal example is, when the global financial crisis happened, much of mainstream economics never saw it coming.
Yes.
And the Queen of England went to one of the universities, I forget, I think it was the London School of Economics,
right,
and asked the professors, why did nobody see this coming?
Okay.
And it was a valid question. They did not answer it satisfactorily. I think some have called it a black swan event that could not be foreseen. But in actual fact, there's a list called the Bessemer 12, a list of economists that foresaw and saw it coming. So when our economics starts to be explanatory of lived experience and predictive of what's coming, then that is the right economics. So I want to thank Joshua Limo for that question. To answer it, I want to begin by stating that what we call GDP, or how much a nation produces, gross domestic product, or GDP, has 4 components. And the first component is what has the nation consumed? Consumption. The second component is what is a nation investing? The third component is what are a nation's net exports? And the fourth component is how much has government spent? These are the 4 components of gross domestic product. So when economists say that GDP is growing, we should be looking for growth in one or more of these 4 components. So I think if we can deconstruct these 4 components and see whether there's growth in any of them, then we can start to answer the question that Limo asked. Why is it not something that is lived experience? So if we take the first one, which is consumption, consumption really is demand. And we have seen that actually demand has collapsed in this country. Last time we said that there are some good things the government has done. The price of fuel was 213 at some point. It's now 176.8. The price of 2 kg packet of unga was 200. Now it's 130, 140. The shilling was north of 160 to the dollar. It's now 130. So prices have come down. But if I have no money, it doesn't matter if a packet of unga is 20 shillings. If I don't have it, that unga will not sell. So the first component, which is consumption, which we can approximate to demand, there is no demand in the economy. Demand has collapsed. And there are a number of indicators of this. One reason why demand has collapsed is there is less disposable income in the economy. As a result of heavier taxation, for example, housing levy has gone in. Shiv Shah has gone in. Gross pay rates at certain levels have gone up. So there's less disposable income in the economy.
Right.
And when you're paying more in taxes, you have less to spend in the restaurant with your family, or maybe in the salon, or doing road trips. And all these drive the economy. The economy is trade. The economy is business. The economy is consumption. So when there's less disposable income, then we see actually that the GDP indicators should be lower. Another sign that demand has fallen, in fact collapsed, is that despite the CBK lowering its central bank rate time after time in the current calendar year, 3 days ago they moved it from 10.75% to 10% flat, and they usually move in 0.25% increments. This time they moved 3 at a go.
All right.
Trying to stimulate demand. And what the central bank is thinking, and the complex name for this is monetary policy, is when we reduce our rate, which was increased to take care of inflation. Now inflation is under control. We reduce our rate so that it encourages lending into the economy.
Okay.
But they have reduced their rate progressively, actually starting last year. And lending into the private sector is not going up. And we have actually seen private sector lending going down for the first time in 20 years.
Okay.
In fact, more than 20 years. For the first time since September 2022.
Okay.
Private sector lending has gone down from about...
You're talking about banks, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Bank lending into the private sector has gone down from about 9.91 trillion to 9.8 trillion.
Okay.
And that doesn't happen. In fact, so much nominal GDP growth is driven by bank lending.
Okay.
But now private sector lending has gone down, something that has not been seen since the Moi era, that is September 2002. So that is another sign that demand has fallen,
okay,
or consumption has fallen. And we can see the CBK, the government is aware, and the CBK is trying very hard to get the banks to lower their interest rates. We saw in February, they were visiting banks door to bank door. Checking.
Could it be, maybe on the other hand, could it be that perhaps because of the treasury bonds, the treasury bonds have become very attractive to banks. So banks can actually afford not to lend to risky business ventures. You want $1 billion shillings to to construct a tower, and but the bank can actually get more out of that 1 billion, by lending to the government. So it could be that the banks have actually diverted their money, just invest the lazy man's investment option.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
This just opens up a whole field of discussion which we may not have the time to go into tonight.
Yeah.
Which I call the management of a nation's money.
Yes.
A nation's money must be managed.
That's true. That's
you are
true.
absolutely spot on. And we should put you in treasury for that solution as quickly as possible, because as we were saying, lending into the private sector has actually gone down for the first time since September 2002,
okay,
when the late President Moi was still in power. And that means that the private sector is not uptaking loans. So the real problem, I know the CBK, one, in February was going door to bank door, and two, they are saying, it was in yesterday's Business Daily, that the central bank will begin fining banks daily, banks that do not lower their rates when the CBK lowers its rate.
Yes.
But as you rightly point out, the real factor is not the CBK rate.
Yes.
I would venture to say, and in agreement with you, that let the government prevent banks from participating in bonds and bills.
Yes.
No more infrastructure bonds. no more treasury bills.
Yes.
No more treasury bonds for banks.
Yes.
Let the pension sector be allowed to participate in that and leave the banks to do what banks should do.
Yeah. Only that right now the bank has a very huge appetite for local
exactly
local borrowing. And I don't know how much of the pension funds can actually absorb, like for example,
Yes.
the desperate need for cash,
which is another point.
Yeah, by the bank. So it's kind of like a
Yes.
vicious cycle.
Yes. So
The government wants money to fund its operations through local bonds, local borrowing. Banks are willing to play that game, and if the bank stops the banks from borrowing, it's gonna, kind of like the system will actually lock up.
what you will see for
Yeah.
sure is you will see bank umbrellas outside this building tomorrow morning,
Absolutely.
asking you which business do you want to start. And then now we are working together to grow the economy, because
Yes.
right now we are not working in sync. We need the economy to grow.
Okay.
And the banking sector should be our ally in making that work. But they are not currently, precisely because they can lend, if you talk about infrastructure bonds, at 18% while in the office. You see, there's also a transactional cost to lending to business owners.
Yes.
You see, if I can get a 1 billion ticket size at 18% lending to the government, but when I meet a business owner, I am lending maybe 500,000 shillings to them. How many business owners? What is the size of my sales force? How much am I paying that sales force for me to reach the 1 billion that I lent to government at a go?
Yep,
So there's a transaction cost. That is another reason why banks are not lending into the private sector, apart from even the private sector's appetite for that lending. But that is a whole other discussion. We are on the reasons why we can see demand has collapsed. And the third reason is that we are not producing anymore as much as we used to.
Okay.
We're actually seeing layoffs. We've seen KK Security laying off. I think I read 1,000 Askaris.
Yes.
Oil Libya is another company that laid off. That means because demand is falling, now the trader is passing the signal on to the producer that I don't need as much of what you are producing as I needed before, and the producer is scaling down production. So that deals with the first component, which is consumption. So growth is not coming from consumption. The second is investment, and I think we touched on this earlier. And businesses are not investing. In fact, as we just said seconds ago, they're actually laying off and reducing investment. And it's a sort of hold your cards close to your chest. Risk-taking is reduced. So investment is not where growth is coming from. The next is net exports. And if you look year on year, net exports have gone down. Or let's say we import, as a nation, we import more than we export.
Yeah.
So
we have obviously a deficit, a huge net exports deficit.
Yes.
Because obviously we import more than we export.
Yes.
So maybe the question is whether that deficit year on year is reducing.
It's increasing.
Or is increasing.
Yes.
All right.
So
okay.
the net deficit is actually increasing from about 9.3 billion negative USD in 2023, I think, if my figures are correct, to about 9.9 billion USD. So that deficit is actually increasing, meaning that is another sector of the four where growth is not coming from.
Okay.
And the last sector is government. Now government is growing. If we look at it from an expenditure point of view, government expenditure is increasing year on year.
Okay.
And we saw in 2020, government expenditure was 2.5, 2.6 trillion. We are talking now financial year, not calendar year. There's a slight difference. So we have figures for the calendar year. The financial year. In 2020, that is FY 2020, government spending was 2.6 trillion.
Okay.
Government expenditure in financial year 2024 which is the last year we have figures for, was 3.6 trillion.
Okay.
So government expenditure has grown 1 trillion in 4 years on a base of 2.6, which is a 9% annual, compounded annual growth rate, which would be phenomenal if the economy was growing at that rate. But we must then ask ourselves, we've looked at the 4 components of growth. We've looked at demand, growth is not coming from there, investment is not coming from there. Is our exporting capability increasing, or even our net exports? It's not there, so it's government. Now, for you to benefit from government expenditure growing, who do you need to be? And I'm now answering the second part of Joshua Limo's question. Qua ground,
yes,
vitu ni tofauti.
Yeah.
Who on the ground is benefiting from these increases in government expenditure? And there are 2 main answers. One is lenders.
Okay.
If you are a lender, then you are benefiting from this growth. Last financial year, we paid 840 billion shillings in interest alone.
Right.
Alone. And that is a staggering figure when you consider what our net collection is.
That's more than if you take a 365-day year and we're paying 800, that's about
more than 2 billion a day.
2.34 billion
a day.
A day, yes.
In interest.
Yes.
That is not repayment. In other words, we are not settling the principal.
Yes.
That is pure interest.
Correct.
Now, if we are paying 840 billion in interest, then you need to be a lender to enjoy this growth. How many? And we are seeing banks.
Okay, let me throw in something into that mix, because America is in the exact same position. They are paying $3 trillion a day in interest. They are having the same issues, and they also have a similar problem of net export deficit. They import more than they export. Yes. And of course the world has been taking advantage of them, according to Trump, and I think it's true. There are trade barriers out there. There are a lot of American goods seem to face tariffs across. I mean, whether you're talking about their own neighbors, Canadians, and the Chinese and everyone else in between. In fact, I think they were saying Germany alone has advantage over the US, because the Germans manufacture the cars, send them to the US, and the vice versa. Okay, so those sort of scenarios. So I guess maybe the elephant in the house, and for those of you that are watching this, obviously, we still come back to the same thing, the old problem of debt, public debt. A government which is heavily indebted, and obviously then it's put in this kind of a continuous loop, vicious cycle of borrow to pay, borrow from John to pay Peter, you know, that kind of thing. So what do you think, if Kenya is going to kind of break that cycle, what really needs to be done? Because I think that's the gist of this conversation. There has to be people pointing in the right direction, saying, okay, fine, if we really want to break this cycle, these are the areas we must really begin to address, and address aggressively, and not just aggress them at the government level. Changing policy is one thing, but also motivating people and pointing people in the right direction if they really want to do something about shaping the direction of the economy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks for that question. And I'll just finish the thought that I was on just before your question, which was who is benefiting from increased government expenditure. And first is, if you are a lender, whether domestic or foreign,
yes,
you are earning your interest.
Okay. Because
debt is the first charge on the consolidated fund.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, so you are earning your money. And we are seeing banks making record profits in a failing economy. We are hearing that vitu kwa ground ni tofauti, yet banks are making record profits.
Yeah.
So how is this possible? And I think in this we have one answer. The second beneficiary from increased government expenditure is the tenderpreneur.
All right.
So if you are supplying something to the government and you are a tenderpreneur, and you are able to charge exorbitantly for the road you're building or the supplies you are supplying, then again you are benefiting from this growth that is localized within the government sector. If you are none of the above, like the rest of us, then vitu kwa ground for you itakuwa tofauti.
Yeah,
and
maybe one small thing. I think